Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to Voices of Action, Protectors of Marine Life. We're going to get started so that we have plenty of time to hear what these speakers have to say. We have with us Rus Higley from the MaST Center Aquarium at Highline in Des Moines, and Liz Schotman with Surfrider. She's the director over Washington and Alaska. And then at the far end, Nick Frey, a former Bellevue College student and sustainability coordinator who's now in urban planning at the University of Washington. And I just want to tell you a little bit about the process. This process is taken from an ocean sciences meeting that I went to in 2024. And at that meeting, Kendall Moore, who does documentaries, did a what she called a living documentary. So in a minute here, we're going to dim the lights and have the focus be on the pictures, and you're going to hear the speakers talk about what they want to tell you today. But it's modeled after Kendall Moore, and so we had a set of interviews that we asked them. They've all answered those questions, and what they're going to tell you today kind of follows these interview questions about their life, about their favorite parts of work, how they ended up doing what they're doing. It's not always a straight path. And maybe a little bit of advice for you. Okay.
So hi, again, my name is Rus Higley, he, him pronouns. I am the director at Highline College's MaST Center Aquarium, which I describe as a community-sized aquarium, so we are definitely not a Seattle. But there's about a dozen facilities like us scattered around the Puget Sound Salish Sea. This picture here is actually, we were doing an octopus graduation. We were releasing one of our animals that had outgrown us, and that is actually me diving. And I've got what's called an AGA mask over my face that includes a microphone, and you can actually see the earbuds. So it's a two-way comm to the surface. And then in my hands, you can see the lights, but there's a camera system. So we're doing a live feed. And if you literally Google octopus graduation, you can find some of them still on YouTube. They're a little bit dated, but we're hoping to do better here in the near future. Next. So I'm what I consider a local kid. Went to school, Mount Rainier High School in the Des Moines neighborhood. Spent my summers up in Alaska, either playing on the beach or my buddy had a boat. We'd go out fishing. Went to places where we shouldn't go with a really small boat, 40 miles out to sea because there's a good place for halibut, things like that. In high school, I was an honors student, and the reason I mention that is because when I went to Western to study marine biology, that was where I started. I almost failed out of school. I was on academic probation, and the reason was in high school, I had the smarts. In college, I didn't have the discipline. And so in high school, I was able to get by. In college, that didn't work so well. And so dug a hole for myself pretty deep, really close to getting dropped out of school. And then started undigging myself. After that, I went and joined Peace Corps and was a Peace Corps volunteer in Namibia, Africa, where I taught science. Then came back, got a first of 2 master's degrees, and have been at the MaST. And I also teach marine biology and oceanography. So.
Hey everyone, my name is Nick. It's great to be here. I am currently a student at the University of Washington studying community, environment, and planning. And CEP is a unique studies program because it involves so many different fields coming together, especially urban planning, which I found an interest in recent years. But I wasn't always interested in really the environment at all. For 10 years, I was a software engineer. So I'm going to talk a bit about my path in the transition from going from software engineering and technology into climate and sustainability issues, which I focus a lot on now, especially climate solutions and how that intersects with the built environment. So a little bit about what I do besides work and studying. I love music, so I go to a lot of live music and I make my own music. I also love kayaking and going outdoors and joining Soapbox Project, which is a climate community space in Belltown. Every week you can check out on Tuesday nights. They have community dinners that are plant-based, and we talk about climate change and what we can do to advocate for climate action. So to go into my background in tech, I started out when I was really young, when I was in 3rd grade. My dad would bring home computers from his job, just like things they were getting rid of, and I would be always tinkering away trying to figure out what I could get them to do and playing with all the settings. And as I progressed through middle school and high school, I started teaching myself how to make websites and how to make apps. And when the iPhone came out, I really was delving into making apps and publishing my own apps in high school. One of those apps was called Workflow. And Workflow was really the most prominent project that I've worked on because it was really well received. A lot of people used it when we published it on the App Store. Workflow lets you connect all of your apps together to automate workflows on your phone or on your iPad. And as you can see, we won an Apple Design Award way back in 2015 for our implementation of accessibility, which is for visually impaired users. But Workflow became Shortcuts when Apple acquired the app in 2017. And you can see at this keynote when they announced Shortcuts, it was integrated into Siri, it was integrated into now every iPhone and Apple device, including the Mac. And through this process of kind of taking a non-traditional path, instead of going to college, straight out of high school, I decided to go into working. And having this success early on, it caused me to have a lot of kind of questions about what is it that I want to do with my life, and especially what I want to do next after having like success like this. So I'll talk about later in the presentation like what that transition was like and how it led me here to BC and into environmental work.
I did not put any words on my slide. Hi everybody, my name is Liz Schotman, she, her pronouns. I live in Olympia. I'm originally from Florida, which is why there's a lot of me in a bathing suit with alligators and coral reefs and such. But yeah, I grew up sort of a semi-feral swamp creature on the banks of the St. Johns River in Northeast Florida, and had just spent a lot of time out in nature and interacting with wildlife, and climbing cypress trees and things like that. And that sort of propelled me into a career in conservation. It's been a wild ride. I've had a lot of really cool experiences sort of working with animals and habitats all over the world. I've been able to travel all over Florida and the Caribbean, and spent some time in Africa and out here in the Pacific Northwest. Sorry. I totally got distracted. So I spent like the bulk of my career as a wildlife biologist working in fisheries. I've got to work with sea turtles in the Florida Keys, and really enjoyed and feel very grateful for all of the experiences I've had out in nature and interacting with these incredible animals. But it got to a point where I was like, I feel like I'm just documenting the decline of everything I love and not really doing much to prevent it. So I was like, I should probably go to grad school. So I went to grad school at University of Maryland, got a degree in conservation biology, and sort of found my way out here in the Pacific Northwest. And I was doing a lot of like salmon and stream surveys, and just really missed the ocean. Streams are great, but not really my cup of tea when it comes to spending every day studying them. So I started volunteering with Surfrider Foundation. I was new to Olympia. I was like, who's doing stuff in the ocean? I need something in the marine environment to like feed my soul. And they were doing some water quality sampling off a local beach in Olympia. So I started out volunteering, just collecting water quality samples. And then they kind of like got their hooks in me. And then I was suddenly a chapter leader as a volunteer and managing their Blue Water Task Force, like water quality sampling program. And then I got the job that I have now, where I sort of work more in the activism space. So I get to enable our volunteer network to sort of try to help save and protect the ocean and coastal places that we love. And I get to pass policies and do a lot of cool activist work now. So it's a great interface for me, having brought my scientific background and career in marine science, and more get to apply that now to trying to find solutions to a lot of the problems out there. Did that answer the question? What other question do I need to answer? And yeah, I feel like I've talked.
Have you talked about all of these projects that you've done?
Yeah, okay, so some of the stuff that we get involved with at Surfrider Foundation. So we are a national nonprofit. Our mission is the protection and enjoyment of the world's ocean waves and beaches for all people. So it's all volunteer run. We have 6 chapters here in Washington that I basically just enable do-gooders to do good things. And some of the really cool stuff that we have done, we banned seabed mining in Washington state waters. We do a lot of clean water policies as well. We work to fight climate change. Right now we're trying to stop offshore oil drilling. We pass a lot of plastic pollution policies to try to limit the amount of unnecessary single-use plastics that we produce and use. And then I also just started a chapter in Alaska, which is really fun. So now I get to go to Alaska and call it work. Yeah, and we get to work with our local, state, and federal policy leaders on some and really important issues. And so yeah, it's very fun times, good vibes. I get to work with a lot of amazing humans.
Liz, if we wanted to engage our students in our classrooms in a project with Surfrider, would that be possible?
Absolutely. So there is a chapter here in Seattle, and then there's also a student club program. We don't have a student club that is active in Washington right now, but you can go to surfrider.org or just come talk to me. And if what I say is resonating with people and we want to start a student club or at least get engaged in some of our programmatic work like beach cleanups and water quality sampling, or if you're really interested in talking to legislators on different policy issues, we're all about trying to empower people to get involved on all those different levels. So come chat.
Okay, Russ, back to you.
All right. So a little bit about the MaST Center Aquarium. So this is located in the Redondo neighborhood of Des Moines here. We're about a 15,000 visitor a year facility, 5,000 plus school kids. We have over 100 volunteers. We also run 20 miles of marine mammal stranding network. So we run from Browns Point up to West Seattle Ferry. We're about 4,000 gallons of aquariums, 250 species of life. You can see the lower picture is one of our youngers playing with a giant Pacific octopus. So a lot of fun things. We've done a lot with the marine mammals that have died and turned them into skeletons that hang in our center. This was actually, I've weirdly become the whale guy and have now built 3 whale skeletons, one at the MaST Center, one at SPU. Nancy, would you make that play? And one at Foss Waterway Seaport Museum. And this was built it was the first return face-to-face class during the COVID stuff. So you can see everyone's masked, and conceptually we maintain 6 feet of distance. And this was a 28-foot gray whale that we assembled in 2 weeks, as a class at SPU, Seattle Pacific, and had just some really cool, Seattle Pacific, if you know, is a religious school. And so we had talks about Jonah and the Bible. We had talks about whale evolution. We had talks about interior design and how you put things in. And so it was definitely a really cool project.
Russ, talk a little bit about the whale that's hanging at the MaST Aquarium and how you recovered that.
So my first whale was quite a story. Our building was built in 2008, and our new facility that we're in right now, and they had this big long hallway gallery that I'm like, this would be a really cool place to put a whale. And I kind of got the, yeah, right, Russ, yeah, sure, Russ, go away, Russ. And I, in other words, right, I had a whole bunch of people saying no. And so I started working on it. I'm like, okay, and I had sent an email to my colleagues and said, hey, in the next year, I want to try to answer these 15 questions. For example, how do you get a whale? What do you do with the goo? Can the building support it? How do you build a skeleton, right? Like I literally knew nothing. An hour after I send the email, I get a call from Kristen Wilkinson, who's the director of marine mammal strandings for NOAA, National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration. And she's like, Russ, I know you want a whale. I know you're not ready for a whale, but I have a whale, and I need an answer right now. I was a part-time faculty at that person. Like this was not, I didn't, like what was I financially committing Highline College to? I didn't know. $1, $1,000, $100,000, right? I had no idea. The whale needed to be towed. Towing a whale is actually relatively easy if you have a boat. I'm sure you have access to a couple boats. And we towed it for them from West Seattle, where it had died, down to a location in Pierce County. And then the experts did what's called a necropsy, which is an animal autopsy. You've all seen CSI. We did the same thing, trying to figure out why this whale had died. Once they did the necropsy, at that stage, the experts, NOAA, Fish and Wildlife, Cascadia Research Collective, are done with it, and it becomes a disposal issue. We're like, we'll take it. And so I went to my students in spring quarter and said, hey, I need volunteers. We're going to go cut up a whale. At the end of the day, you're going to throw your clothes away because they smell so bad. Out of curiosity, how many of you would come and help me, volunteer? 100%. Right? There's enough whack-a-moles of us out there, and so we did that. And so you've all cut up a chicken or a turkey. This is a 40,000-pound turkey. 2 20-person days is what it took to cut this beastie up. So we then took the bones, and Mother Nature is marvelous. We composted them under about 15 yards of horse manure. Why horse manure? One, it's the right temperature of compost. You can different compost cooks at different temperatures if you're into this. And steer manure stains the bones, right? I mean, again, I didn't know any of these questions. Now we're figuring them out as we go. We buried it for 6 months. After 6 months, we did a dinosaur excavation, and the bones were clean. And at that point, it became the biggest IKEA puzzle you've ever seen. From the time it died on the beach to the time it was hanging in my center was 2 years. Done with, we had, I think, around 100 people involved from start to finish in the different layers of it. So this runs you through, like one of the interesting things with it is my site is only 3,000 square feet. Means we can't build the puzzle on my site. We need probably a room about the size of this room to build that whale. I didn't have it, and so we found an external site that was willing to let us use their spot. Their payment was, they said, Russ, help us get a whale and build another whale, which is why Foss Waterway has one now. Foss Waterway Seaport Museum in Tacoma. And then one of the problems was we built it on this site, but now we had to transport it, and it has to go through 2 double doors, so just like the doors to this room. So that whale has to come apart. It's modular. Its head comes off, its jaws come off, its arms come off, its tail, its ribs come off, and so bringing it in, and just a pretty crazy project. That you saw the SPU build of assembly. Before the assembly, there's a whole lot of off-screen work that went on. So a really, really fun process. The other really fun thing we've been doing is Puget Sound is a nursery ground for six-gill sharks. Six-gill sharks are a deep water shark that lives around the world. Think submarine depth, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 feet deep. And they come into the Puget Sound to give birth, we believe. And for some reason, they come to Redondo as like the best place to see them. So if you are a diver between June and September, if you dive, especially in the later hours, there's a fair chance that you'll see one of the little ones. A little one is 3 to 8 feet long, and a 6-footer weighs about 500 pounds. That's the little ones. A big female can be 18 foot and be great white size. So, and these are they're curious sharks. They'll come up to the divers, kind of check them out and swim off. Anything underwater is faster than you as a diver, so in other words, they're in charge. I can't chase them down. And so working with the city of Des Moines, we got Des Moines is now the Sixgill Shark Capital of the world, and we are using it as a PR publicity stunt, right? You can imagine using that. We had our first event was Shark in the Park, and we had a basically kind of Earth Day meets farmers market to celebrate this last year. We had a float in the Waterland Parade, all sorts of different things. And so you can see a couple of our inflatable sharks that were in the parade, and they were checking out the aquarium. one of the cool things and ways that you could potentially get involved with a facility is social media. You are probably better at social media than I am because I'm old. And so this was a time lapse of a nudibranch or sea slug, Hermescende crassicornis, and it is laying eggs. And what's cool is if you watch just behind its bottom, you'll see all of a sudden the egg dog legs towards the center. We don't know why that happens, and you wouldn't have seen it except on time lapse. Nobody knows. We'd have asked experts around the country and so forth. Everyone's stumped, but that video on social media has actually the decimal's wrong. It has 28 million views on Facebook, so went seriously viral. So, and then we're also, I'm expecting it to arrive this week or next week, a new underwater camera. It's on 200 feet of leash. I'm going to put it out on the dive site, out at 60 feet of depth, and it will start streaming on our YouTube page 24/7. So you can actually, an underwater camera, which is also where the sharks are. So like there's potential the sharks could swim by in the camera. So look for that to start going live, if fingers crossed, December, January, somewhere around there. So, yeah.
Back to Nick.
That is very cool. Yeah. Well, I'm going to go a little bit into how I started getting into the work that I do now and the studies that I do now. I went through this period of kind of rethinking everything and, what is it that's really important to me and what do I want to do next? And I landed on climate change as a very prominent issue that I feel like my generation needs to focus on and I feel like I need to focus on. So I decided, the next step could just be going back to school and learning about this new subject. So I enrolled at BC to start working on my prerequisites and my general eds. And very early on when I was here, I got connected with the sustainability office. Sarah and Alyssa, if any of you have met them, are really wonderful people, and they do a lot for campus sustainability initiatives. So through them, I was able to hear about this opportunity to attend a conference called WOHESC, the Washington, Oregon Higher Education Sustainability Conference. And when I went there, I was impressed by the amount of passion and enthusiasm that all the speakers and presenters had for these topics, whether it was decarbonization or community engagement, things that were really speaking to me. And so I tried to make the most of my time here at Bellevue College by getting involved and starting my own projects. The first one I started was this soap refill stand. This was for Earth Month 2024, and it let people, like students and faculty, bring containers from home and refill with their detergent, their shampoos, etc., so to avoid, buying new plastics. And also, while I was starting, I didn't really know what it is that I wanted to go niche into. I just knew the environment in general was kind of interesting. But I started getting passionate about urban planning when the 2 line launched. I went to the launch and I was just really surprised by how, parents brought their kids, and a lot of these kids had never been on a train before. So it was kind of eye-opening just for them to experience, what the infrastructure around us could look like. And it's also, I feel, an example of that we can actually accomplish really hard things in this time where it seems like so much of our politics is just stuck. But people at Sound Transit are doing really amazing work. Let's see if there's anything else I want to say on this. Yeah, a lot of smart people go into focus on, starting businesses or pursuing profit. But I feel when people start to go into public service and working on, these public projects, it's really an impressive use of their time. So then, as I got further into BC and connected with the sustainability office, I got this job as the outreach coordinator. And it's a really neat way of getting a student position integrated into sustainability. It let me address so many different projects on campus and connect with students, which I really loved. So I helped plan the events in Earth Month 2025, and especially this Earth Market was a big project of getting dozens of businesses and local organizations to come to campus and just offer their resources to people. I also worked on this transit tracker project, which just launched this fall. So if you go around in 5 different buildings on campus, including just outside this door in the N building, there's these digital displays that will show you when the upcoming buses are coming to campus. So this is something that I programmed using my previous tech knowledge as well as my interest in transportation to improve the experience of commuting to campus and leaving campus to hopefully reduce carbon emissions in the long run.
Sorry. Now you've heard a little bit about each of the speakers and the projects that they've been working on. And so now we're going to say to you some of the things we might have said to ourselves early on had we known them. And we're going to keep going with Nick.
Yeah, so I think when I was younger, I felt like things were much more black and white. One thing that I struggled with is, you know, when we think of a career, we think of it, how are we making money? But I think that you can create a distinction between how you make money and what's most important to you and what you're devoting your mental resources to. So I would tell my younger self, like, it's okay to pursue making money if that helps you sustain yourself and taking a job that you don't like or working on something you don't like. But in the long term, if you're moving towards what's most important to you, that's what really matters. And at the same time, when these opportunities come your way that could earn you a lot of personal financial gain, to not like let that squish what you really want or your authenticity for very long. Like, you need to make sure that your compass is set on, at some point I'm doing something that's more purposeful. Because I've seen a lot of my friends, especially in the tech industry, who I feel they could focus on social problems or things that are much, I think, more important than just whatever, you know, a company might want you to do as a software engineer. But because it's so lucrative, they end up staying in this comfortable position and without taking risks. And then I think the last thing on this slide was that if you just get started on doing something that you value and you find people who also agree with that, it's really powerful. This is an example. So outside of Bellevue College, outside of UW, I decided earlier this year to put on these fashion shows. And this is a completely different, you know, way of focusing on sustainability than anything else I had done. But we brought together just a bunch of friends that we had, and we centered these events around, like, what's the story behind the clothes that you own and the things that you wear, and how that's valuable in a non-tangible way to really value the enduring quality of your clothes. And so we just had a fun time, you know, posing, taking pictures, and listening to music. But these fashion shows were a creation, like, we didn't know what we were doing. We just found a space in Pioneer Square, and we just made it happen. I think another thing I wanted to talk about here was just what it means to be a leader. And for me, I feel like I'm more of a quiet person, a quiet leader. I don't really get up in front of people very often and be like an outspoken figure, but I still, in the background, I'm really focused on creating things and like making things happen. And just that, there's power in doing that too. So if you're wondering about like, where's your place and everything, like, you don't have to be a politician. You can do things like this. And then on this slide, this is really where I'm contemplating, like, how do I move from just achieving things because it's impressive or just because it's, you know, good for me, to a life that's more centered around these bigger questions, like what's really needed in the world and who benefits and what's my place. And I think when you ask these questions, you start to get answers that are a lot deeper and a lot more sustainable to pursue in the long run, because you don't lose your strength in that.
Back to Russ.
So I'm willing to bet that most of you have been asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you hate it. Like, you despise that. Such pressure. Let's put that on a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 32-year-old. Like, nobody likes that question. And so one of the bits of advice that I wish I'd had is think about your future and try to tell me a job that you would love to have in 10 to 15 years. Okay, so let's do a hypothetical. I want to be President of the United States. Well, if I want to be President of the United States in 10 to 15, or if you wanted to be in 10 to 15 years, like you're not actually probably old enough because you have to be, I think it's 45. So right there, you've already learned some of the steps. But if you want to be president, the two most common president precursors are senators or governors. So if you want to increase your chances, doesn't mean that's the only way. Obviously, our current president was neither of those. And then if you look at, well, what did they do before that? Oh, they were lawyers. Oh, wait, right? And so you can kind of step that back. So for me, if I want to run the best aquarium in the world, Monterey Bay Aquarium, some of you could argue with that, but let's just go with that. One of the things as the director, as the CEO of Monterey Bay Aquarium, I need to go snap, here's $1 million. Snap, here's $1 million. Currently, I go snap and I go, there's a buck. There's a dead whale. So I can get a whale, but I can't get, and so for example, one of the things I'm pushing on is I'm actually working right now on a $500,000 grant. It will be my first grant, right? And so I'm not that 15 years. Maybe I can get there, but let's go, hey, it says you need Spanish. Well, guess what? Speak Spanish, right? Like, learn those things. And so, find that dream board. And it could be one job, it could be 3 jobs, put it under your pillow. And now you can be like, oh, I need a bachelor's degree in urban planning. Cool, right? Like, you can then kind of start breaking it into pieces and start thinking about what you want to do.
Preach. Oh my gosh. So much good content there to kind of follow up on. I would definitely second everything both of you guys have said, especially in terms of like, I think I've read a recent statistic, like the average career is like 5 years, or your skill set is only going to last 5 years. And so, what worked for prior generations is not really going to necessarily be the way that we should approach our careers going forward, because the pace of change is so rapid. So I think, kind of speaking to what Russ was saying, like, just stay aware of what you want, and like be cognizant of the fact that might change over time. What I wanted to be when I was your age is probably like a dolphin trainer, or something silly. And what I want now is very different. And so just check in with yourself on a regular basis to be like, is this goal I'm pursuing still what I want? Because it's very likely that will change, and that's fine. But it's good to just be aware of when that shift happens so that you can sort of pivot if you want to. The other thing is like kind of what you were saying, like there are different ways to approach your career in terms, like I was always told as a child of the 90s, like follow your passion and you'll never work in a day. And that is a lie. I work 60-hour weeks I've worked 80-hour weeks regularly because I work in a job that I am so passionate about, and I love it and I'm grateful for it. But like, there is an alternate path where you can go for, money and financial security. And like, there's no shame in that either. And some of our best contributors to Surfrider are people who make a lot of money and donate it. And that's how they give back. And that's fine. Like, it takes everything, whether it's your time or your skill set or money or whatever, or your ideas. You can use different aspects of your life to contribute to the world around you. And it could be through your career, or it could be through like volunteerism or other ways. So that is a totally personal choice. And then the other thing I would say is, just stay curious and open to different experiences. I get a lot of questions like, what can I do? And like, sustainability, very vague umbrella. I love like you bring like tech efficiency and urban planning and fashion. These are all huge issues in the realm of sustainability. And people sort of look at environmental nonprofits like mine, and they're like, oh, this is what we need to do to fix the world. And it's part of it, but there's all these other aspects that might have nothing to do with like environmentalism that are huge. Like fast fashion is projected to be like 20% of global emissions in the next like couple years or something like that. Like plastic pollution is a huge driver of climate change. And so there's a huge level of intersectionality with all these different fields that you guys might be exploring right now. And I challenge you to think of like, all right, this is the thing that I like. How can I apply that in a way that is both satisfying to you, is something you're good at, that you're going to want to keep doing, is something that the world needs, and is something that, sparks joy. Because if it sucks to do, you're not going to keep doing it. Like I've given up on a lot of things I don't enjoy doing, such as marine science. People were like, oh, I want to be a marine biologist. I can't tell you how many times when I was a marine biologist, people would say that to me. And it's like, yeah, there's some really cool parts of it. I got to like swim with sea turtles and, and go fishing and call it a job and things like that. But I spent a lot of time like on spreadsheets and beating my head against a wall against like, a computer and, entering data. Like there's a lot of really boring, uninspiring aspects to every job. And so I think kind of what speaking to Russ was saying, like talk to people, think about what you want to do and what you're curious about, and then go hunt people down and ask them questions. Because most people are stoked to talk about themselves. Like you want to ask me about my career, I will talk, obviously, way too long. But ask some questions, because a lot of times we perceive what we think something is, and then when you get down to it, like the day-to-day is very different. And so, yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions. The worst somebody will do is like be like, I'm too busy, sorry. And then find somebody else. Or just keep nagging them. That's also a possibility.
So perfect. That's what we're doing next. Okay, we do have a runner in the audience. The lights are going to come up. Does anybody out there have a question for any of the speakers?
You guys talk a lot about like these like big lessons and that being like an area of growth. However, I wonder, is there like a big turning point for you guys in order to get to that lesson? For example, was there a moment in your life where it was like, this is what I wanted to do, or this is what I should have learned in the past?
So when I was in my undergrad, if you can imagine, I had to pay the bills. Maybe some of you can relate to that. And I got a job driving forklift. It made good money. I have never, ever put it on my resume. Could I have worked a little less, made a little less money, and had something that built my resume, right? I just hired an aquarist, a lead aquarist he basically takes care of my fish tanks, all my animals. We have 250 species. One of the requirements in his thing was bachelor's degree. Check, okay? We all have bachelor's degrees, right? Like, what else is on your resume? Whether it's directly related, if you want to be an elephant trainer, probably you're not going to get paid doing that for a while, okay? Then maybe have a dog and work on training that, right? Like, an animal is an animal, right? So just, kind of build that up. And so, that kind of get off your phone and go live. Right, and I am guilty. Right, let me be very clear. This is not I am holier than thou sort of idea. Take it. As was mentioned. Right, keep learning, keep asking questions. And like you said, the idea of going and asking somebody. I was one of those wall sitters. Right, like at the high school dance, I sat on the wall because I didn't have the guts to go ask anyone. The worst thing they would have said is no. The best thing they would have said is yes. If you can't ask, it's always a no. And so, right, if you want to go, you find that person in the future that has a job you like, tell me how you got there. Tell me what you did. Tell me the steps. And that should help make those steps easier. By the way, they also could then become a mentor for you. And I'll guarantee they know more about the industry than you do, which means they know more about internships. They know more about jobs. They know more about these other things that now they can pass on. They can be your advocate.
It's not the grades you make, it's the hands you shake, is somebody told me that in the past. And your grades matter, obviously. Like, please do well in school, obviously. But building relationships and meeting those people, you never know. Just being open to those experiences. I started my career, I was in college, also had to work. I was working like Pizza Hut, Sonic, that kind of stuff, where I'm like, this is great for my life. And I responded to a flyer in a stairwell on college and started volunteering to identify dead fish in a lab. And then I got hired on to actually work, and then got a publication as an undergrad on a fisheries survey that they were doing in Florida. So it's just a unique opportunity to actually get paid to do something that propelled my career forward. And if I wasn't sort of keeping an eye out for like those opportunities and sort of taking advantage and talking to people, I might not have, I might have missed out on that opportunity. And I still have like lifelong friends that have helped me in my career along the way, for sure. And don't be afraid to make mistakes also. I think that I was raised by a perfectionist. I have very toxic perfectionist tendencies that I fight every day. And being uncomfortable and failing is like where we grow. And so I feel like our society doesn't really give us a lot of permission to fail, but that's a normal part of life, and you should just make sure you learn something from it, and then it's not actually a failure. It's just growth.
Those are some really perfect observations, I feel, because one mistake that I made was waiting for that big moment where I was like, okay, this is what I know I want to do. And that never really happened for me. It was much more like I'm still kind of waffling, trying to like find the perfect opportunity on some flyer somewhere, or like some job opportunity that's going to come up and like get me working on the perfect climate change solution. Like that doesn't happen like that. So I needed to be more humble and realize that the small opportunities that were in front of me, even if they weren't like the ultimate goal or vision, would connect me with more people. And then just having a big community lets you have access to so much more and like collaborate on things. So yeah, I feel like don't get hung up on waiting for that something to be revealed to you. Like you can just take the small steps forward.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that. I agree. Like, I was always very envious of friends, and I feel like we're kind of sold this story that it's like, oh, this is what I'm going to be, and then I'm just going to kind of work towards it. And I had no clue. I was like, I like critters, whatever, zoology degree, that sounds fine, but then it was like not actually the vibe I wanted. And so just recognizing that like career paths are very rarely a straight path, and it's okay. Like that's very normal. I have a few friends, it's just like that's what they wanted and they worked for it, and I still don't know if they're like humans or aliens, because it was just like beeline for this goal. And I always envied that because I was like, I don't know what I want. And I still kind of don't know what I want in life. So that's normal too.
Just want to say thank you to everybody for coming, and to our sponsors for helping us to put on this event. So thank you very much.